This is the MO Sessions podcast, where we talk about magic ways to become a better magician to be good to your magic. I'm your host, Benny Slade, and I couldn't be any more thrilled that you are here. Today I'm sitting down with Jeff Korn. Thank you, Jeff, for sitting down with me. We've been talking for a short amount of time, and I knew I had to have you come on the podcast and chat with me about your journey and your magical experience and just everything that has to do with you and your magic. And it's incredible. So thank you for taking the time to
Thanks
be
for
here
having
today.
me on.
Absolutely. Let's start at the beginning. I think every magician kind of starts somewhere. What was the first time you saw a magician or a magic effect that just you knew that's what you had to do the rest of your life?
Oh man, I've done all my life. I'm a child of the '90s, so I grew up on those World's Greatest Magic specials and John Ritter hosting and like learning tricks from Matt King, and then running to school the next day and trying to show them off to all my friends. So I got to do that. I think the first time I learned something or saw it live, I had an uncle. Shows it's the classic story. An uncle shows you a card trick, and then you beg him to teach you how it works. And mine was clever. He made me wait, and like wouldn't teach me. But he showed me. Interestingly enough, it was a version of the Four Burglars trick, but it was one that used. I've never seen anyone else do it, and it used a discrepancy. So like early on, I realized that discrepancies are really useful. So like it kind of started me off on a good path, and then it built from there. Bought the Mark Wilson book, went to every bookstore I could find, bought every book I could get my hands on. Learned
That Mark Wilson book is great.
It's incredible. I had the small one, the cyclopedia, not the complete course.
Oh, really?
I think I was 20 when I finally got a copy of the complete course. But
nice. I didn't realize they made it in a hardcover as well.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew that either.
Yeah, it's just such a great wealth of information. But I had the little one. I've still got it in a box somewhere, and every page is dog-eared and has little check marks next to it in the table of contents. I was just fascinated.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked before about you being around Johnny Thompson and your experience with that. Can you kind of go into, I'm sure everybody wants to hear about it, for those who were around Johnny Thompson in the early days and even in his later days. Can you talk about your relationship with him? Was he a mentor to you? Were you just kind of around him and picked up things?
Yeah, I mean, I spent more time around John than I ever assumed that I would. When I was stationed in New Mexico, and I worked at a magic shop there, and through that shop, I had access to Johnny's videos, all of the L&L videos, any magic videos that came on the market, and I was immediately drawn to the Thompsoni videos, the commercial classics of magic, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Something about the style and the way he carried himself, and watching the Thompsoni and Co. act online, and always had a crush on Pam, right?
Oh, yeah.
But whenever I was very fortunate, whenever I went to Vegas for the first time, it was through the Jay Noblezada workshops. And Jay brought in a bunch of really incredible people, one of which being Paul Vigil. And Paul and I hit it off. So whenever I moved to Vegas, Paul was the first person that found out that I was moving. And he just happened to, introduce me to John through whether it was a magic club, the Gary Darwin Club, or wherever. So I would get phone calls at 1 a.m. Hey man, you need to come over. Man, it's 1 o'clock. What do you just need to come over. Click. All right. So you hop in the car and go over, and there's Johnny Thompson, and insert magic celebrity here. Like everybody wanted to come over and hang out. So I got to spend a lot of time, like late night sessions. John would finish up working with, P&T and want to come over and session. And I just happened to get those invites. So it was really fortunate. I knew I was lucky to be able to spend some time with him like that, but I didn't realize just how lucky. Like I ended up taking him to the vet with his dogs, and I got to spend some real quality time with him. And he was incredible. He was an absolute wealth of information. Anything you asked him, he had an answer for. He knew everybody. He had seen every act. had an eidetic memory for magic acts. He could remember,
Mm.
acts from the 60s. If you asked him a question about whatever, he had the reference. He
Hmm.
if he didn't know the person, he knew the person that knew the person.
Right. Connected.
So it was pretty incredible, and then being able to, like, like, once you see, I mean, it was something else.
Do you feel like his presence shaped your magic in any way? Like, do you feel, because I know, like, for me, I'm around magicians and I'm like, there's some stuff I pick up on, there's stuff I don't pick up on. But there's one or two magicians I've been around where I'm just like, I'm absolutely like, I wouldn't say like smitten by them, but I'm actually like, they're just everything from head to toe is just amazing with outfit and the way they present themselves and perform and everything. And then they go into the theory and then they go into,
Mhm.
the facts. And then you just like go on this huge rabbit hole of information and learning stuff. Do you feel like,
Yeah,
his
whether
presence kind
whether
of
it was
shifted that for you?
directly or indirectly, I definitely do. I was always a student of the Vernon School. The
Hmm.
books, the Revelations videos, and John was the exemplary of that. Like, that was, he was the kind, he was really bringing that into the modern day, and he was like the last link to that
Mm,
that era in a lot of ways.
right.
So whether it was learning from the videos or him or through his students, I really do. I would like to think so. I mean, I don't know how humble that would make me sound to say, "Oh yeah, absolutely," But I mean, I think Johnny was the best. So when it comes to people that, if I were to try to
Right.
not emulate's the wrong word, but if I were to try to live up to a standard, I think he set the bar pretty high.
Yeah, I think depending on magicians who have a mentor or they don't, or even if they read it in books, for me personally, I feel like we have an obligation. We stand on the shoulder of giants
Mhm.
and we kind of have an obligation to give homage to those who came before us in a sense. So I think that's really interesting that, in some way, Johnny kind of impacted so many people in such a short amount of time. Because I feel like from the LNL videos up until his book came out, he was around and doing things and not really that present. I think
Mhm.
a lot of magicians saw him privately and things like that, and then all of a sudden his book is coming out and he's out there more, and you're hearing about him, and now another generation of magicians are around him and learning from him, and
Well, I think
I mean,
Full
I've
Us had
seen
a lot
videos
to do
online.
with that. Full Us
Yeah.
really, like, Penn and Teller have been singing his praises since the beginning. Teller
Mm,
does the dove act on one of the
yeah.
seasons, and he was using that in their Vegas show for a while. And I think they really put a lot of respect on his name, because John did, once he had retired and he wasn't doing the Thompsonian co-act all the time. You didn't. Where would you see him? Magicians, we knew
Hmm.
where to find him. But
Right.
people don't realize Johnny. I'm pretty sure he'd be misremembering the story, but I'm pretty sure John was the very first magician to work on the Strip,
Hmm.
or at least headliner. You know,
Interesting.
this is back in the 50s or 60s, and
Hmm.
he was around. He was definitely,
Yeah.
he was always the guy. But once that act had retired, unless you were in the club,
Hmm.
you didn't see him. So the
Yeah.
lay people didn't really, towards the end of his life, understand how serious his contributions are. But amongst the magicians, if you don't know him, the guy that you're studying does. You
Right.
know,
Interesting.
so like, he's like the magic grandpa. He would tell you to cut that grandpa shit out. He would say that all the time. But like, he was the, definitely the forefather. He was the guy that, even the people you wouldn't expect, people would call
Hmm.
him from around the world and would want to just want his critique. Hey, I'm going to send you a
Yeah.
video. Tell me what sucks. And he would
Really.
absolutely do it. So
Really.
yeah, I mean, he was one of those links to the past that, uh, just invaluable amounts of information.
Thinking about your time in Las Vegas and COVID kind of shifted the lives of a lot of people, and we've talked about it before. It shifted your life for sure, and you ended up moving from Las Vegas to Georgia, and now you're presently in Florida. Do you feel like not just COVID, because I'm tired of talking about
Right.
COVID with people, but Do you feel like the move and maybe being in new environments, different environments, impacted your magic and presentation towards it at all? Or
Yeah, not so much the presentation. I think that's matured over time. You know, like the shows that I would do before going to Vegas are definitely different than, the type of magic I'm interested in now, or the style of performance. But a lot of that grew from Vegas, and I think it's just been more honed since I left. I moved from Las Vegas. I was there for 10 years, 10 years in 1 month, right? So, like, a solid decade is, I think that's a pretty good amount of time to stay. You know?
yeah, for sure.
And the the deal with Las Vegas is nobody leaves forever, right? That was always what I was told. I had friends that would go there for 5 years and they'd go somewhere else, and 6 months later, a year later, they got the itch and they would want to go back. So, like, Vegas is always kind of there. But I left and moved to a place about an hour and a half outside of Atlanta, right on the Alabama state line. There were four magicians in the area. Two of them were assistant pastors and kids show performers, right? Like, very different from the group of people that I knew in Las Vegas.
Oh yeah.
And, so not a lot of magic community there. And now I'm in Jacksonville, and Jacksonville, I haven't, I've only been here for a couple of months, so I haven't really ingratiated myself with the community here. But so it's kind of, it feels like it's me and the people that I hang out with on Zoom. I've been
Right.
pretty lucky to keep up with some of my friends this way. I thank God for
Right.
modern technology.
Right.
And that definitely helps. But yeah, it's definitely changed things.
Yeah. Before that, you were in the Grand Canyon
Yeah, so
and you had a residency there. So talk to me a little bit about that because I've never heard anyone having a residency
there was another
there.
performer there. Okay, well, I'll start at the beginning of it. The Grand Canyon Skywalk is the big glass bridge. It's on the Wallapai Reservation, uh, hidden. I mean, it's 2 hours from Vegas. It's the closest you can get to the Grand Canyon and back in one day from Las Vegas. It's about the only place you can do that. And it's kind of a hidden secret. Like, you hear about it or you see it on TV and you don't realize where it is or just how spectacular it is, right? And when they were opening up the Skywalk, they brought a magician down that they had found up near Reno named Mark Crow, right? Fantastic magician. He owned a magic shop there. One of the underground guys, right? Like, nobody knows who he is, but he's amazing chops, works more than anybody ever because he was at this place. And he was doing it so many days out of the week that he just couldn't keep up, right? Like, he needed some backup. So I would go down. He found me, and I went down there for 3 days a week and performed at a little tourist town, a little resort that was right on the edge of the Grand Canyon. So my backdrop was one of the most beautiful places in the world. They built us a theater. It was just a
Oh
small
wow.
room that would hold 30 people. We never packed the room out. It was sporadic shows. The audience would
Mhm.
change. So we could do anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, 30 minutes if we wanted to, depending on you know how much fun we were having with the crowd. It was a it's the best thing I can liken it to would be the exact opposite of a walk around show, right? If you're doing a strolling gig, you can walk up to
Right.
your group, you can introduce yourself, you can throw down, and if at any point in the show you decide I'm not into these people, you can just leave. And we had the exact same thing, only they were coming to us. So
Mm.
the tour bus drivers would bring people in, they would drive out, and they would come to stay overnight. And they would get a close up magic show that was, completely unexpected, but a lot of fun.
Mm.
And we could pack them in the room. We could do as much as we wanted. And as soon as the audience, if anybody got out of line in any way that we weren't into, and we were just like, oh, I don't like these people anymore, you could just tell them
Right.
to go. So it was incredible. We could work on the
Interesting.
material, whatever material that we wanted, change the set, change the performance, character, the style, anything we wanted to adapt, we had total control and free reign, and they just trusted us to go out and do our thing. It
Wow,
was
it sounds like a
incredible.
dream. Yeah.
And it lasted. I was there for 6 years. He was there for 13, 14 maybe.
Oh wow.
And then everything shut down.
Yeah.
So once that shut down, what are you going to do?
Do you feel like in that environment, it being much different than strolling and all these, tourists coming through, like you said, there's such variations there. Do you feel like creatively you were able to really be like, oh, I've been working on this thing
Oh,
and
absolutely.
now I can try it now and or change it or, modify it?
So the beauty of it, my favorite part about it was that, during the slower seasons, you might only do 5 or 6 performances over the course of, 6, 7 hours. But on other days, I'm talking 14 or 15 sets just back to back to back to
Wow.
back to back.
Wow.
So I could literally have an idea, come up with a line in one show, and then hone that line 10 more times before I had to go and sit down and go to bed, or like come back the next day and then start it over. So if
Yeah.
there was a new piece I wanted to add to the show, if there was something else that I wanted to, a line or uh, a touch, like, I would wear my glasses. And if I thought, oh, I can hold out and like adjust my glasses here, any little tweaks like
Right.
that, I could just build all of it into muscle memory. So
That's
some of
great.
the pieces that I did there, I have a thing we talked about. You know what I'm talking about, but I have a in one of my notebooks. I kept track, not of the exact set list, but of the individual pieces that I would perform.
Yeah, let's get into that. Do you want to
Sure.
talk about your notebooks and we can kind of dive
Oh yeah.
into
Oh, we could definitely.
I don't know if you want to share your creative process around take us through like what you're getting ready to go do the Grand
Yeah.
Canyon and
So
you've been
the
planning
way
a
the
new
sets
thing.
would work out, I had with excluding my card magic, I would have a deck of cards on the table or a couple packs, usually in
Mhm.
a nicer card box that would just sit there. And I
Right.
normally I wouldn't, some of the audiences didn't speak English. Most of the audiences didn't speak English, or at least somebody in the room wouldn't.
Do you feel like that was a challenge for you
At
performing?
first, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talk a lot, as evidenced by the last 20 minutes. But, you learn what what needs to be said and what things don't need, but you also learn to communicate with people who don't understand you. So, certain words or misdirection might be, attributed to like, or, you know, lined up with a certain action.
Right. Mhm.
And you figure out which ones of those and like how to draw people in. And so here's what I'll show you what I'm getting at. So I've got my composition notebooks, right? These are my life's blood. But in this one, this is specifically created for whenever I was at the canyon. Each one of these post-it notes is a different weekend, a 3-day weekend. Each day is
Wow.
actually in a different color of pen so that I know how many times I performed individual pieces while I was there.
Mm.
For the first year and a half that I was there, or maybe 2 years that I was there, I wasn't smart enough to do this. And then I got really curious. So let's see, from 2017 through 2020, I think it goes. I wrote down, I kept a tally sheet of every trick that I performed, short of my card magic, because card tricks
Wow.
are card tricks. If I do them,
Right.
I would do them for the audiences that I liked. But
Right.
card magic with people who don't speak English is a little harder of a sell. People from China just don't care about your pick of cards in a lot of cases. Right? It's a
Yeah.
special kind of performer.
Do you feel like you had to tailor your performances or magic kind of like what I tapped on before about like having to change it because there were people who didn't understand you. I mean, magic, we know we can dive into that, but magic is the universal language.
Right.
Somehow we get connected to it at some point. So
I
do you feel like the people who
Yes
didn't
and no.
understand? Okay.
So I didn't have to. If somebody picks a card and that card comes out of my pocket, everybody knows what's up. The effect is so direct, and I don't do a lot of the in depth. I like the very straightforward. The you can describe it in a sentence kind of card magic for
Right.
lay people. I don't think.
Hmm.
I think lay people need more of an education before you just throw really solid card magic their way.
Right.
They don't know. It's like the with three fly. Paul Wilson has a bit in his Scottish Flyers crowded coins routine where he would do closed handed coins across, and one by one as he closes the coins jump, and then he says, "Oh, you know what? You can't see this as it happens." And then he picks the coins up and does three fly, right? And that little bit of an education, like, look how cool it is when they go
Hmm.
across with my hands closed.
Right.
So now when you do three fly, it's a it's just a different experience, and I
Right.
like that. So I think that, like, lay people, I like being able to give them that kind of an education. But with the Canyon shows, I could mix and match the sets as the show was going on. I had all my material around. Some stuff was in my pockets. I knew my starting and my ending. I would usually do 3 to 4 pieces for them, and depending on how long I had with them. So I could kind of weave back and forth to where I want, as long as I could get to the ending. And the ending
Hmm. Right.
was pretty surefire.
Right.
So, like, that was nice. But when it came to the groups, like, when coins are appearing, you don't have to say anything. When the coin vanishes from over here and reappears up your sleeve or up their sleeve or in their hand, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody, you're going to understand what's going on no
Right.
matter where you are. So it's really nice. Like, that was the best part about doing it. I could, be performing for someone from Finland, and then 15 minutes later, I've got a group of 30 people from China that have they're introduced to me, or their tour guide would come up and give a full introduction in Mandarin, and I hope he was being nice, and then I would have people come in from New York City and want to talk about gambling. So, oh, here, let me show you some cards.
Right.
So, like, it was really nice to be able to have that kind of freedom. But as far as this, though, what I was saying, some of these, I mean, you can see how many tally marks go across. Some of these pieces
Right.
I've counted. You can look at it and guess. I mean, there's two, three pieces that I've done 10 to 20,000 times, like, literally,
Wow.
And so when you do that, I can jump into those things right now. The muscle memory's still there. It's been
That's
years,
amazing.
but, like, once you've got those reps, it's kind of nice. Like, it's all built. So now I don't have to think about the techniques so much as I can think about what we're doing. And the
It's almost
projection
like
around.
Skinner-esque.
Yeah,
If I come on a Monday and see your set on a Tuesday, it's going to be completely different than Wednesday and Monday
God, he
and
was a master.
so forth.
He just
Right?
had that memory. He knew all of it, and it was all locked in, and it was flawless. And I'm a huge
Oh yeah.
Skinner fan. I mean, we've talked about Skinner a
Agreed.
little bit,
Yeah.
and I think he was just. He's one of those guys I wish I could have met. I've heard some cool
Agreed.
stories, but
Yeah.
man, like, spend an hour with that guy, and you're going to learn something.
It's an encyclopedia in its own of just
Absolutely.
everything. Because he was very well versed from Vernon to Marlowe as well. I mean,
Hmm.
he talks about it in the Skinner tape. We've talked about the Skinner tapes off recording before, and when for me when I started listening to them, I realized that this is a master class in magic. Not Michael Skinner, but Michael Skinner telling you about magic and where to go and this book and this page and check this out and
Right. Absolutely.
knowing all the variations. It's Michael Skinner literally not teaching you per se, but putting you down the rabbit hole and saying, I'm gonna guide you like a spirit to where you need to go, and it's incredible.
Yeah,
It's
he
amazing.
definitely is one of those guys that I wish I could have spent any amount of time with. And then what's really one of my favorite things about Skinner, we know by name what some of the effects are, whether it's like,
Right.
expansion of texture or whatever.
Right.
We know that he did that trick, but then you actually hear about it or see it or on a video,
Hmm.
and you go, "That's not what I thought he would." Like,
Right.
that's not the way that it was written up where I learned. And you
Exactly.
find out, oh, he just had access to an entirely new level of magic.
Yeah.
So it might not be 100%, like, it's a Vernon version of it, right? But it's a
Right.
Vernon version that we didn't get to see.
Right.
They didn't write it in the book like that. I think that's he's one of those guys. He's like John, Johnny.
Yeah.
There's so much magic that he's forgotten will be lost forever because he did it. if you
Yeah.
didn't think about it at the time, like nobody would see it, and it was
Yeah.
if you inspired the thought, it would come out. It was incredible.
That's how I feel like the Skinner tapes were
Mhm.
because he was getting questions about certain things and like way early on in his career, and he'd be asked about, what about when you're in this venue? What's best for this? And da da da. And he knew it's interesting to kind of be very well versed on different venues and what plays and what
Mhm.
doesn't play and what works and what doesn't work. Do you feel like with you being you've done private events, you've done I'm sure have you done trade shows and kind of
A little bit. That's a
a little
market that I'm kind of interested in.
really?
It's yeah, because I mean trade shows. I've done a couple, like informally more than anything else.
Yeah.
And every time I do it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see myself doing this, you know. And then I start thinking about the amount of work and like tailoring all of my material so that it would, I can plug in the names of to do it can't
Right.
half-ass something, you know. If
Right.
I at least
You
not
gotta
magic
go all in.
related. In the real world,
Yeah.
I'll half-ass stuff. Fine, that's fine.
Right,
But
right.
like magic, I have a slightly different
Yeah.
amount of respect for. So it's a little harder for me
Correct.
to jump in and then But then I see people online talk, like Danny Orleans is just the master, and I
Right.
hear I read post on Facebook or in the in some of the private groups that I'm in, and man, like if you get good at that, that's an entirely new art form. And I think it would be, I might gear myself that direction.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of my best friend talks to me about Eddie Tulloch a lot, who is
Yeah.
apparently like the trade show king. But when you see videos of him doing, I'll just say like older trade shows, back in the day trade shows, just knocking it out of the
Hmm.
park. Just apps and it's not because my dad's in that world where he has to go do conventions, every now and then and do this whole thing and for his businesses and whatnot. But I always ask him if you need a magician. I'd love to kind of get my feet wet and see what that's about. But when you see Eddie Tulloch, it's not just like people passing by and checking out, your booth or what. Eddie Tulloch would have a whole audience around him. It's like that picture in the Thompson books when you see Thompson doing trade show, and it was a crowd of people surrounding this little, stand up table or whatever it is just I'd be curious to know if that's still a thing.
Oh,
Is
it definitely is. I
really?
performed with Doc Doherty, guy
Hmm.
from outside. He's in North Carolina, good buddy of mine, and we rode up and we did a show together in Ohio, and I got to watch it happen. It was the first time I had ever done it, like officially,
Hmm.
and I watched him, immediately he can pull the crowd in and start doing his thing. And like, man, it feels very similar to, real street magic, like
Mm,
put your table here, pull the crowd in and get the money.
right. Hmm.
And the difference is that you're not trying to get the money, you're trying to get the people, come over here, let him get the money. Let me show you,
Right.
here, pick a card. Now give him your money. It's like but in that regard, it does feel similar to that street show. So and magic, it's so I don't know, people like watching it.
Yeah.
You don't realize, like we always like to think people like seeing magic shows, and then you get one person that's like, whatever, yeah, sure, show me and it kind of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
discourages you. But at the trade shows, man, they like. I've noticed they will absolutely crowd around if you've got something interesting. But you're
That's
competing with a
interesting.
lot too. The one that we did was like a technology show, and there were people over here with just the robotic, the Boston's robotics dogs.
Oh
The
wow.
robot dogs are running around. There are two of them from two different companies
Right.
running around. Like, that's what you're competing with, but it's a lot
Yeah.
of fun.
It's almost like having to bark in a crowd.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, it's exactly what it is.
That's interesting. It's
So,
interesting
at least what it
to kind of
seems like.
like.
I don't want to sound, like I'm not trying to play
Yeah.
expert there, but like that's what it seemed like.
Yeah. It's not like you're ringing about. Come one, come all, come.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm very curious to know if the Victorian, when you see these old paintings of cups and balls
Hmm.
and street performers, if it how they drew in a crowd then. I'm sure there's information out there, but I would think it's hasn't really changed much if you're having to draw in a crowd and kind of get people to come see you perform or even
Hmm.
I've never done street magic. I'm not it's too ballsy for me to kind of go out
Right.
there and
I've,
do it.
I've
Is there
tried it a
any?
couple of times in Vegas, and I was pretty lucky there that, I worked for the Houdini's Magic in Vegas.
Okay.
So part of that job involved, we were in all of the casinos. So we
Hmm.
had a pitch table that you would stand up, you were elevated, and we had a microphone. So you're
Oh
loud,
wow.
and you had to teach yourself how to do a street show, pull the crowd in, and do your pitch. So the people that I worked with there were quite a few of them that were able to transition from that into street magic, and I got to go out with a couple of them, a few times, and you you see it, like if the people that are good at it are really good, and the ones that are bad at it are like me. I was terrible. But it was definitely an experience. It's an entirely different performing style. You got to be able to do it in the round.
Working experience.
Yeah, it's something everybody should try because
Mm.
you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn everything from how to interact with people, how to keep your eye on people, how to gear what magic you do, depending on the situation you're in, because you can't do all of your act if people are behind you. Like certain things
Yeah.
go out the window.
Yeah.
So I think everybody should try it a couple of times, but it is.
I feel like it was an unconventional space for you to kind
Yeah,
of be out there in the
I
street and be
think
like, oh,
at the time I don't think I had the confidence to do it at the time. You know,
yeah. That's how I feel. You have to have a lot of bravado to go out and
yeah, I get that
because you
base.
see Oz Perlman do it on videos for Penguin, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, there's one video, I think it might have been the Born to Perform card magic one, and you can tell at one point one guy's being real, he's being a wise ass with him, and he kind of like wasn't sure what to do, so he kind of navigated really quick and turned to the person next to him and like just started performing for that person, and I was like, I feel like it's kind of like the Grand Canyon situation. Like you had the protection to be like, we don't want these people watching, so go ahead and
Right. Yeah, it
move
was
them
nice
along.
because
You don't have that,
I had a room. Like it said magic show over the top. People knew what they were getting into. They didn't know when they got
right?
off the bus, but they knew by the time when I was outside college, they knew that I had instant credibility in that
Hmm.
situation. Whereas if you're street performing, you've got a keyboard stand and a tabletop, and you put it down and you start yelling, and in Vegas it's a little different because in Vegas, if somebody's on the side of the road talking to a group, they're typically, your brain immediately goes to, he wants my money, whether
Mm,
it's the 3 card money or the shells, or typically the shells. I saw that way more than money games, but
yeah,
or people trying to get you to take their tickets, and call whatever numbers, paying them the most money at the time. Like Vegas, it was a little different. In other cities, though, you hear about people like, that was what Cellini did forever, and I watched videos of him, and he, 50 or 100 people surrounding him. He's just doing his thing, like totally at home. Cosmo, totally at home.
right.
So it's cool. I just never, I don't know. I think that's where the anxiety came in. I just never had the confidence in that whenever I was there. Now I could probably get into. I'm a little older. I feel like it's not some kid yelling at people on the street to stop for them.
Yeah.
Gray hair gives you a lot of credibility.
Yeah. So let's shift over to your contributions with magic publications. I think that's pretty incredible. I think a lot of magicians they want to do it, but sometimes they're kind of hesitant to do it for many different reasons. I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But can you talk about what that's like collaborating with other
Yeah.
magicians,
Well, so
your
I,
process through it?
yeah, I've always been more reluctant to put any of my direct stuff into print. Like Shane Cobalt said something to me one time. If you want to learn his magic, you've got to meet him. You've got to shake his hand
Yeah.
and look him in the eye. And and some people think like, "What a cocky asshole this guy is," and he is a cocky asshole, and he's so talented that he's earned it. His magic
Hey,
is
he's
solid.
a friend of ours. Be
And he's
nice.
he absolutely is. Yeah, he's a sexy bastard.
Yeah.
He's fine. I get it. Yeah, but
Robe on or not?
yeah, but no, I love Shane, but
Yeah.
he told me that one time, and I went like, that's pretty incredible. Most people are trying to throw their stuff out there and get everything on the market and put their name on things. My contributions are a little more understated, in the only I think it might be the only thing that I've actually got published that you could track down is I gave Paul Vigil a trick for his book, for the Doors of Deception book. And, he put that there, and, but that's awesome. That's where most of the people who know my magic have seen it, short of like us jamming on something.
Right.
People don't know I took all of the pictures for both of those books, for the Classic Fantastic and the Doors of Deception. I stood over him with the camera and
I didn't know that.
went through, helped him. I gave him lines, and I gave Paul Vigil lines, right? I gave him two. There are two of my lines.
Should I edit that out just in case?
No, you should leave that in, because that is the guy that writes all the great lines. He got two of them from me.
That's funny.
But so like I was always a little more hesitant to put things directly out there, but I'd like to sit and collaborate, and my friends will come to me and go, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this," and I get to sit, and watch what they're doing, and I'm good at sanding off rough edges on things.
Right.
I've always thought that was pretty nice. To when people would come to me and go, "Hey, what do you think of this?" and then but if you tweak this and that, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
It's kind of like what John did, right?
yeah, yeah. And I think that might be part of where the influence came from.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
so I was always a big fan of that. I like the construction of magic. I like the like seeing what things can be joined in interesting ways.
Right.
So when I would help people, or do any kind of, I don't want to call it consulting, but I guess that's what it is.
Yeah.
When I do anything like that with my friends, like, it's fine that I learn a lot. You learn a lot about what they're doing, but you also learn a lot about the things that you like. So I've always thought that was an interesting way to grow yourself.
What's interesting about my research when I was trying to create interview questions for this episode, I was trying to figure out where I could find your magic, and I found your castle act on YouTube,
Hmm.
and I was like, "Oh, I'm surprised that he has it on YouTube." I know
Yeah, I didn't know it
everybody
was on
at Quan
YouTube. I got to
has.
go turn that off. So I've performed at the castle twice, right? It was in last year, 2023, and in 2022. And
But it's
both
great.
times that I did it, my goal was always, people would say, "Oh, I want to perform at the castle," and I want to do it twice, because I can get in once. Getting in once is
Right.
just the right guy going, "Hey, man, you should get this guy in."
Right.
But doing it a second time, I thought would be like, "Oh yeah, they like me," right? And so now when I make the phone call, it gets answered, and that's a huge, that feels great. Like that's really reaffirming, everything that I think of myself, right? So both times that I did it, I recorded every single show. I figured it, like I cleared it, and I set it all up. The first, we talked about Skinner. The first time I did it, I got a little cocky. I took pretty much my entire act from the canyon. Like I said, six, it was like 10 or 12 different pieces, plus the card magic that I didn't typically do there.
Oh wow.
And I mixed and matched. Like the first 4 nights that I was there out of the 7, I didn't repeat a trick. And like
Mm.
I take that back. I would do one set on Monday, another set on Tuesday, and by the weekend it was just me doing, it was the highlights. It was my favorite
Right.
bits from the things. But
Right.
I made
From
sure I wanted to know that I had performed each one of these pieces. So I recorded everything in my repertoire at the Magic Castle,
That's pretty cool.
and it was awesome. So like
Yeah.
I've got those videos, but I sent them to some family and people on online that would never get a chance to go to the castle, but I didn't
Right.
put them out there. There's Armando Lucero talked to me at one point about how prevalent magic is on YouTube. Anybody can go out there and find it, and he's like, you can't find my act, right? And he made a good point. If you want to see his act, you pay him a lot of money and he'll come and do it for you. And
Yeah.
I can see both sides of it. It's
Yeah.
nice to have it's a badge of honor to be able to say that you've performed there. So
Yeah.
I like being able to send the video to somebody.
Hmm.
I don't want it to necessarily come up on YouTube. So like if people
Yeah.
ask me for it, I'll send it. But
Yeah.
a lot of that stuff, it's like I, you know,
Yeah.
the,
And the biggest thing from that, your act is on YouTube and to take it down.
yeah, I know. No, I know which video you're talking.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
was
No, but it was great.
that
I
I
mean,
left, but it's
I've seen some bad castle acts. I'm not gonna
yeah, and I don't want to be one
be
of those,
silly
right?
about it.
Like I'm very critical of my own act and my
Yeah.
own magic. So it's when I watch through, like, oh, that's a bad angle for that, and the whole video has to come down now, you know? And
The whole video is great because I was not only surprised that it was up there because, the magic buddies in the world, that it's not, like you just said, it's not going to be on YouTube. So when I watched it, yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed it. And
well, thank you.
yeah, I hoped I was there.
I'll send you the other acts. You can see the stuff. I mean, you've seen the parts of the act whenever I did the lecture for Shane and
Yes.
Derek.
Yeah,
So,
it's probably one of my favorite lectures that Shane
oh,
taught me.
thanks. I That means a lot
Yeah.
too because I know you've seen a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they asked me to do that because like they know me. Derek, whenever we did that, Derek hadn't even seen most of the material. He just knew me, so they had to do
Yeah.
it based off of reputation. I've got good friends, so my friends say nice things, and like who knows, we all say nice things about our friends. So, but it's nice. So when I did that, I wanted to bring the heat. Right, it was something
Yeah.
that not a lot of people know really who I am. I was too busy doing stuff whenever I was in Las Vegas, and so it was nice to do that. But so you've seen it through that, but like it's nice when you see it all combined into an act as opposed to a lecture format.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
the act, I always thought was pretty nice because you're juggling so many ideas. You don't want the effects to conflict. You don't want the whenever I was at the Grand Canyon, if I've got a good line in my head, I might use it in this piece and then I'll
Right.
use it in another trick because I'm never going to do these in the same set. So now when I'm,
Mm.
I'm there and I start thinking, oh, did I already use this line? Or I do a tribute line to Thompsoni. That I steal a couple of Johnny's lines because he had some of the best, and there's one that I would use, and like, did I already do this one? Did I already
Yeah.
so things like that, but it's fun when you get to see it in a full set list.
Yeah. You've helped me a good bit on my own working ons for a show. I'm starting to kind of really rehearse it. I've got the scripts done and everything. And
Nice.
I was just telling my best friend earlier today that it's really strange to go through a full rehearsal with yourself
Mm-hmm.
and record it. And it's timing, it's presentation. You've helped me with the wand spin, and that moment there, even that I say something after I wave the wand, and I've missed it so many times on rehearsal. I'm just like, no, we gotta speed it up and hit it and do it. And it's really interesting. It's a lot more difficult than I really want to say that most magicians make it out to be in their lectures, and they talk about it and they write books about it. Actually doing it is something completely
Mm-hmm.
different.
It's like I don't want to sound like an expert. I like to think that I'm pretty decent at it, and I'll show you why. I showed you kind of
Yeah,
quickly
yeah.
in the book, but it's like a muscle. The more you do it, and then suddenly,
Right.
whenever it's time to jump back in, you start thinking about it. And
Right.
I know people like Paul Vigil, for instance, right? One of my absolute best friends. I've learned more from Paul about performing styles and carrying yourself as a magician, but also watching him put together the acts. We
Right.
would sit down and he would go, "I'm thinking about doing this, 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 and this," and I'm like, "Dude, the show's in an hour. When you've got enough material and you know what you're
You
doing,
just
and
go.
all the material's there, you can just kind of like." I just need a through line. I just need to be able to. So like I would watch him in the way he could do that, and it's like he's got a start and an end, and he knows what he needs to accomplish in the middle. Perfect, right?
Right.
So once you built that muscle up, and I know quite a few people that do it. He's just fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm very jealous right now. You and I are having this conversation. Jared Koff, and Mike Picciota are all
I
performing at the
know.
castle this week,
I know.
and
Let's shut this down. Let's go. We're going there.
right. And I was like, dude, you should have let me know.
I
you know.
know. Yeah, I saw
So,
that and I was like, man, that's gonna
so I
be
was just talking. I was, and that was the question I asked him. I was like, So what are you doing? And he's like, I think I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, you
Yeah.
think? Like, dude, you're going to breakfast, I guess, but like, you got the show, you know. But
Yeah.
when you know what
I
you're doing,
think that's one of my favorite things about magic right now is that I kind of feel like that's the great divide is that when you have a handful of things you're able to perform with and you can just go in any order and do it however. I actually have an episode on here from when I originally did the podcast talking about jazzing. And I had submerged myself in Frank Garcia's work so much so that anybody, when I was going into our Discord sessions or whatever it was at that time during the pandemic, people who had the books, who didn't have the books, would ask me, show me this, can I see this? And I would fully go into Frank Garcia and go
right?
into, the whole, and this is the bullet, and, all of this other,
Mm-hmm.
stuff patter that he did because I relate to it a lot, being from New Jersey.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
That would be
I go into that
close to
character. I go
home.
into like this kind of like, I don't know, are you mobster affiliated? Are you
Right.
not? Are you?
Yeah.
It is. And I didn't do it. I didn't do the Garcia stuff for a year or two. And coming back to it, I don't know if I told you this when we talked last time, but I found a video of myself doing everything in the books.
Nice. Oh my God, no.
Everything in the books because I was supposed to put it out for my membership. I was going to do a whole month of Frank Garcia and I was going to go over the book, the red book, the green book, the exclusive, all of that. Do what?
That's a lifetime's worth of sleight of hand. Not even just card magic. I mean, the card
TV
magic's
aces.
incredible,
Well,
but
and the controversy around Garcia is half of the shit is stolen. So it's like,
sure. But
yeah, but to
we're
do it, to channel Garcia and do it that way is really like I said earlier to during this, it's an homage. It's kind of like,
right.
there was an article that came out in Genie not too long ago talking about a day with Frank Garcia, and they were talking about their day with Frank Garcia and their experience and everything. And I feel like for me it was very I really steeped myself in Frank Garcia and prioritized learning all of his material just in those books. I didn't really go into the three ball, book or the cups, and that stuff's in his close up books and his card books. And so, but it's the same thing. Frank Garcia stuff, I can jump into it and
Well,
jump
we're
out
gonna
of it.
jam on that next time we talk. We'll turn
Let me
off.
get let me get my chops together. Let
Yeah,
me
we'll turn this one
because
off.
it's been a
We'll
while.
get
It's
into
been a
it.
while.
That's pretty great. I've only seen a handful of videos, the Stars of Magic video, and when that was re-released on DVD, and other things here and
There's
there.
a private session on YouTube he did that I don't think was supposed to go out there, but
Nice. I think I may have seen that too.
that's kind of like his masterclass of
That's so good. I love that
yeah.
style. I love the classic. I'm a classicist at heart, So
Me too. Me too.
when it comes to if it's time to learn something new, if there's something I want to add to the set, I typically it's something that I from like the older books, which I know
Hmm.
people like to say that a lot, but like I think that the effects were clearer. You talk about standing on the shoulders of giants. Well, the only way that we're doing that now is like we're adding to what came before.
Right.
Whereas some of that classic stuff, the Hofzinser stuff still works.
Oh
The
yeah.
methods are going to be way more
a hundred
advanced
percent.
and more in line with the modern technology and the modern sleight of hand, but the
Yeah.
effect still works. They
Yeah.
thought of a card, it ended up in my pocket is as strong as it gets.
Exactly.
It's the simple. Like once you, so I like this the simplicity of it because like we were saying, the audience doesn't have to understand the words coming out of your mouth to understand the
Right.
magic they're seeing in some cases.
Yeah. I think that's my confliction with what I'm trying to do right now is that I am very versed on jazzing
Yeah,
rather than script. Like I know I can hit here and I can hit here
right.
and
But
I
it's
can hit
controlled
here.
jazzing too. It's not like you're
Right.
just jumping in and like in the middle of something going, oh, what am I going to do next? Like
Yeah.
you have an idea of where you're going. You know
Right.
start and the end. In the middle, you can kind of now something you said though that about like you can do them in any order. I don't necessarily know that. Like I agree with that, and this is what we were talking about with this. So in these these notebooks, these are scrapbooks, right? I call them notebooks because that's they're composition
Mm-hmm.
notebooks. But I put stickers on them so I can tell which one's which. But each one's got a different purpose, and this was designed specifically for the Grand Canyon shows, and it's kind of morphed over the years because I'm not
Okay.
doing that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I in here, they've all got a table of contents. It's all of this was designed to be some, and I've got props. I stuck props in these things, whatever it is that
Oh
I'm
wow.
working on so that I can immediately open it up. I've got $30 right here just because they're set up for the Bill Swindle, the Rocco's Last Dollar or whatever it was called from right, like just a trick that I liked, and I was like, oh, one day I'm going to do this, so I needed the gaff bills. There
That's
it is.
cool.
So what I wanted to show you though was we're talking about constructing the sets, right? And I said that was something
Mm-hmm.
that I'm a big fan of. So as far as my stand up set, as I go through my material, over the years, I would write down any trick that not just that I do perform, but things that I want to, at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, my philosophy's changed a little bit. Now it's more of like I will come up with an idea of what show I want to do, and then I will figure out which effect.
That
But
makes
this
sense.
is a pretty good starting point. So each one of these little post-it notes is a different piece that I have at some point worked on, and I
Mm.
can sit here and I can put them in an order and go, oh, I could do that, and then that leads, and then that, oh, that doesn't lead, that conflicts, and I can move and like mix these up, and that way I'm not constantly erasing. I kept erasing whole
Right.
pages, right? So, but this is my stand-up act starting
Oh
off,
wow.
but this is my close-up set, right? I added an extra page because
Oh
all of these
wow.
pieces were things that I at different points I was working on Wildcoin very heavily. I've got a page or two in here somewhere that's all of my thoughts on Wildcoin. So I've got a list, and now whenever I'm looking over these things and going like, oh, the Wildcoin would fit here because it accomplishes this, it gets whatever idea across. So I can add that to my list and I can mix those up. It's along the lines, it's like psychological jazzing, right? As far
Mm-hmm.
as putting the act together.
Right.
But whenever I sit down and look at them, I can look and immediately tell I can't do that piece and then go to that one.
Right.
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 So it helps me keep things like that straightened out.
Yeah.
And
I didn't mean like I didn't think like
yeah,
silk and coin. Like I didn't mean like that. I meant like coin effects. Like if we're gonna categorize like a pocket of coin effects, we know we can go here with them
right.
and do that, and then cards and categorize
And
them
like
that
there are
way.
certain things like if I'm doing something, if I'm doing, say, a 4 coin effect, right? Whatever it is. If I've got 4 coins out, I don't want to, or say coins across is a great example. If I'm doing a coins across with only 4 coins, and then I decide, oh, I want to do some, this other piece that uses 6 coins, right? I
Right.
don't want to have to reach into my pocket and pull out two
Right.
more because now if
Yeah.
they start to go, well, did he use one of those, right?
Yeah.
So like things like that, like that's the OCD part of my brain. I really like to like be able to structure it like that. But it reminds me of like Johnny doing the routine. He'll do the 6 coins with the hand ping chan, and then he puts 2 coins away. Like he slides them over to the side of the
Just
table, and
real bluntly.
now he does the 4, and then he
Right.
takes 2 more and sets them away. Right, and now he's just got 2 and 10 kai pennies, and then he puts one
Yeah.
away, and he pulls out the copper coin. Now it's time to do copper silk, right? And like it's cool. All
Yeah.
the coins sit right here. It's it builds, but it also it becomes more streamlined. I think there's a real poetry to that.
We can go on and on about John just for
So good. He was
yeah.
just the best.
Yeah.
It was. I can't tell all of my favorite stories on here because some
I
of
know.
those like yeah, they
We'll save that
but
for another
but
time.
I've like my favorite stories were the stories of him and Tom Mullica because Mullica was another favorite of mine, and I only met him twice, and never got to talk magic with him. It was towards the end of his life, so he was like he was Tom Mullica. I'm not gonna you know
I missed his lecture here in Atlanta because he made a return to Atlanta. I think he was sick already, but he made the return on his last lecture tour here, and I think he went over to where the tomfoolery was in
yeah
Buckhead, which I've been to. I've been to the location where it was,
Really,
And
that's see, that's awesome. That's one of the. I mean, Atlanta's got
I
such
don't know why it's not talked about more. I actually don't recently within the past few months. I actually think they knocked down that building. So I'd be
well, we
curious to
need to
know like
do
if there was
something.
stuff in the walls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but so the reason I bring up Tom, he and Johnny were like brothers. I mean, they were, and they were assholes to each other. They would prank each other in some of the most epic pranks I've ever heard the story. Like I'd be in tears hearing, but like
Yeah.
so they're
I've heard some stories and
a
it's
little
just
more off
crazy.
color, right? Not my
Yeah.
stories to tell. Like, you got to
It's
ask
the
one of
old
John's
schoolers.
kids, and he'll tell you
Yeah.
the story. But like, so those guys would have been, that would have been it would have been incredible to be around them, as long as neither one of them you knew that they were, or neither of them knew you were there, because
Yeah.
if they knew you were there, they'd prank you too, right? Like
Yeah.
it just.
I feel like there's a new generation of old schoolers that have some crazy stories. I saw a video recently of Ackerman telling a story and
Oh,
on
he's got some
YouTube.
great ones too.
Yeah, and I was like,
Alan's
that
such a
is a
great guy.
wild
Alan's one of the
fucking
best
story.
guys in Magic. He really,
Yeah.
he's running the Magic Club, the Gary Darwin Magic Club in Las Vegas right now. He's the guy. He dictates, when they go to a new location. He's there almost
Great.
every week. He was there whenever I was there. He was there pretty much every week, and I mean, man, you talk about the nicest guys in Magic. I love Alan. He's just an incredible person, but in
Yeah.
his Magic, he knows everything. When it comes to
Yeah.
card Magic, especially, he knows every variation of everything he's ever done. He will tell you, this is the way I did it in 1972, and this is how I changed it in 1981, right? And he'll just go through the evolution of an effect, and he remembers
Yeah.
everything he's ever written down. He knows the Marlowe stuff. He knows the Vernon. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Allen is incredible. One of the
Yeah.
greatest living magical resources anywhere. I
And I
love
didn't know
that
that
man.
until recently.
Yeah, I
I was
love that
talking
man
to a
so
friend who
much.
knows him, and
He's
yeah, it
so
was
good.
just yeah.
And what's great, I'll tell you, like my dirty secret about Alan. I always saw Alan on the videos, right? And he always seemed a little uncomfortable on some of his videos, right? Because he's
Right.
performing for whoever, but he was a computer nerd, I'm a
Oh
computer
really?
nerd. I was a computer programmer in the Air Force, right? And like I
Oh
realized that
wow.
I couldn't sit at a computer all my life. It drove me nuts. But I understand like what it takes to do that. I understand Alan a lot more once I figured out, and that man, I thought, I'd go and see him perform at the Castle. I went and saw his performance 10 years ago, probably.
Oh,
I didn't know what I was getting into, but I know I love Alan, so I was going to go see it, and I was going to show up. And he tore the. I mean, it was incredible
really?
watching Alan do a full-on magic show where it wasn't just like, oh, let me show you this new thing I'm working on, and instead
Right.
it's like, let me show you why I'm the baddest man in the room. Dude, Alan was incredible. His close-up show, I mean, it wasn't all card magic. Like he would throw down with everything fit Alan, but at the same time, you sit back and go like, it wasn't a card trick show. It was
Yeah.
so good. Very, very fun to watch.
Yeah. That's
Like
very
I
cool.
knew I loved the guy, and I also was very blown away by what he was pulling up. He's
Do you feel
fantastic.
proud in those moments? Like as a magician, do you watch like Ackerman, let's say, you watch him and you go, I'm proud to be a magician and watching people around him and the reactions and like,
Yeah,
wow, like this is
I
can't believe we do this.
absolutely. So I dated a girl in Las Vegas that wasn't a magician, but she kind of had an interest, and I would bring her to the Magic Club to watch Alan. Right, like he was one of the people that like he knew who he was performing for when he was doing
Right.
it. He would show us something different than he would show them. Right,
Interesting.
and so like he knew he was.
It's kind of like what Marlowe and Vernon did.
Yeah, right. Like Marlowe's a great example, right? Vernon was, like we know the Vernon, but Marlowe, you think about him as being like, let me show you a card, this, and then you forget, like he came up with the Tree of Diamonds. He would
Right.
do the unexpected prediction. He
Right.
knew who he was performing for. He
Right.
was performing for one of the card guys. He was going to show him something different. But if somebody, the waiter comes over, the girlfriend comes over, he's going to do something on a
Oh yeah.
that's like appropriate, right? Appropriate,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't, it's not even a strong enough word. He's going to do something that's
Right.
going to like blow the roof off, but at the same time, like, it's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, it's a it's really fun watching people who can have that kind of range, that diversity in
Yeah.
what they can do, but also that type of self awareness that they can do what's appropriate.
I felt that way when I saw Mario the Magician, the Maker Magician,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I went on a whim because I had heard amazing things. He's been on, my kids have watched him on Sesame Street, and I was like, I got to see what this is all about because there's a lot of hype around it. And that's one of those I I don't know if I should admit this or not. When he was finishing his act, it's just like every other act. We're getting up to the big, the prestige, the end, right? And I cried. I don't know if I should admit that, but I
oh, you
cried
should
because
absolutely admit that. Like, that's one of my, that's such a great
for
thing.
a kids magician, because you don't realize that not only is he performing for the kids, but at the end of it, I got the sense of a feeling once he looked around the theater, he goes, and I got all of you.
Yes. Oh,
And I was
good.
like, wow. Like, I really sat there and I said, yes, he's a kid's magician, but what he's doing, his cups and balls is amazing. But I don't know I don't know if he still does it in his show, but I wasn't sure about how he was going to do cups and balls because he pulled out the cups and balls, and I was like, no, not on stage, not for kids. Like, we're not about to do this. And he did it, and I was like, wow. Yeah. At the end, he looked around and was like, and I got all of you. And I was
Yeah.
just like, just a slow tear, just like I was like, and it's one of those moments I was proud to be like, he has taken kids magic, or I should reword that, doing magic for kids
Yeah.
and adults, and put it together and pretty much said, this is what I do magic.
Beautiful. That's
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful. I like that
And
you
it
make
doesn't
the
matter if it's for
distinction
kids
as
or
well.
adults.
You made that distinction between like kids magic and magic for kids. Like
No,
there
there's a
is a
huge
difference,
difference.
and
There's
I
being a clown and then there's being
yeah,
a wizard, is are two completely different things.
right, and and they like different
Things.
emotional responses. So I was really lucky. Again, I know some great people, but I was really lucky. Last week, I got to have a very long and thorough discussion with Rick Mao. Right, he's from
Sweet.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe. He's a wizard. He's one of my favorite human beings. Right, I think he's one of those guys that like the people that know him. Like they know why he's special. And he was describing, he's been not retired, but he hasn't been performing for a while because of a variety of things.
Hmm.
And Rick he's right now, he just started last weekend. He started a run in is it
I
Philly?
saw that.
I think it's in Philly. He started this run. He's doing 12 shows, right?
I saw that. He
And
posted that.
he told me why he's doing it, and it's essentially because he wants to know that he can do it. He wants to know that he
Mm.
can still do it, but he wants to communicate these ideas. He's like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
getting older, and I want to get this out there, and I want to do this and put this into the world while I
Hmm.
can,
Hmm.
which is great. And so in the middle of that, he told me his philosophy on how he structured, how he was developing the shows. He blew my mind for 3.5 hours. He blew my mind repeatedly,
Yeah.
and he talked about that emotional response, how he thinks about magic, but also like he describes some of the things in his show, and I'm like,
Hmm.
dude, they're gonna cry. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna bring tears to their eyes because like this is power. This is not like you're not a dude up there doing tricks. Like this is friggin' power.
Yep.
Uh, it's really incredible.
Yeah.
I've had one, maybe two experiences where I've looked around and I've seen the people, tearing up, or you see someone cry. The first time it happens, you go like, and like I never had like I never knew what I did. Like it's like,
Right.
what do you? But it takes me back to like if you ever have the opportunity to go and see Armando Lucero perform, I the same girlfriend that I took to see Alan, she would come and have dinner with me and Armando. And she brought somebody one time, said, "You've got to see this guy." And we're sitting in a Thai restaurant in the middle of Las Vegas. And he's like, "Well, would you like to see some magic?" And he sets his table up, it like turns this place into a theater,
Hmm.
turns on his music, and he does a silent coin matrix. And he brought so much power that when I look over at her, she's crying.
Right.
And I'm like, that's an artist.
Right.
He touched
Exactly.
something that was so deep that resonated.
Right.
That
It's yeah. It's a respect,
it's
or it you know
yeah,
it
with
hits them differently. I think there's two different kind of emotions that can happen during any sort of performance. And I think when you get a sense of a real artist or creator or, you know, I hate to use this term, but master magician or a conjurer who really takes it seriously. Channing Pollock was a master magician. Lance Burton is a master
right.
magician, right? So when you're looking at, I've been fortunate enough to kind of like see, I grew up in all the arts, so I've seen one off plays and one act plays and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just the whole gamut. Um, and when you're looking at quality control, that's how I felt with Mario. And I feel like when I see other magicians that I would prefer to be around, it's because there's a quality control that you sit there and you go, the magic is, you know, the tools and the props and all this is one thing, but it's what's being taken away from that at the end. I mean, Mario had like a drone flying around with a piece of ribbon and the person's card selected on it, but what he's doing is building an arc.
Right.
And when you realize at the end what the point from beginning to end was, he's an artist. He's really, I don't want to use maker because that sounds I think it kind of diminishes what he really does. I mean,
But
I
it's
think
hard
he
to
is a
quantify some of these things, into a
yeah.
single word. Like you don't like using the word master. I don't. I'm not a big fan of the master magician thing either, because
No, I mean,
Lance Burton, that's what he was. He was
right.
that was his thing, and like I understand why we have to say it, because when you tell people you're a magician,
Historically,
it's like, it puts a certain idea in their head. But if somebody else refers to you as the master magician, pretty cool. Like,
right.
okay, well, that puts it's something. It's
Right.
a,
Well, it's
a
like these guys behind me, Keller and Thurston.
mhm,
You would refer back in the day, you would refer to them as master magicians
right,
because I guess they had reached the highest point of their careers, maybe, or skill, or I don't really quite know. But I think, and I don't even like the word magician. I think that kind of puts it into a box as well.
right.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're a magician, and yes, you
I'm finding that I've had that same kind of argument with myself, and like it's weird when you start thinking about it. It's more than just semantics. Like there's something
mhm.
else there. So, like, what do you?
Mystery man doesn't really.
Yeah, and it's like I don't do illusions, and
You're not an illusionist, right?
it was funny. I went during that conversation with Rick. Like he said, he was talking like, "Are you a magician?" Like I don't want to call myself a magician, or like some people would call me a mentalist. And then he pretended to like hack. Like it was an involuntary response to the word mentalist. Like
Right,
he
right,
refer to himself as like,
right,
and like I understand, like we know what the words mean, but they sound kind of weird, and then like, it
right,
puts you in that box.
right.
And like Rick described it as like, I'm just the old guy at the bookstore that's got some cool stories and has listened to all the best music, right? Like, oh, that's it. That's exactly who. Okay, I got it.
Right.
Like how do you quantify that in a word and put it on your business card?
That's like David Blaine.
Yeah.
I just did an episode talking, and that's before he announced his new show, which I didn't even know was a thing. But it's like David Blaine. You see him in the beginning of his career, and you go magician,
Mm-hmm.
street magician, and then all of a sudden it's like, what? You're in a glass box. Okay,
Right.
that's not what magicians do, and you're being buried alive. Kind of in the scope of what magicians do. And now you see it go full gamut, and you're like, you're doing card tricks, you're doing weird endurance stuff, you're putting your life at risk, you're going up in the air on a giant fucking balloons and all this other stuff, and you really sit there and go, maybe he's not a magician. He's this weird, bizarre guy who
It's
does a
something.
bunch of
He's him.
right.
He's David Blaine. Like,
Right.
that's it. Like, what else do you?
Right.
Yeah, it's weird. Like we'll still call him a magician in the ad, but like
Yep.
anybody who knows, they know like there's something else there, right?
I feel like when you reach that level of your career, you can call yourself whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely.
I think you and I know of magicians who have reached that point in their career, and they'll say, "Yeah, I'm a magician. I'm a sleight of hand artist. I'm a this. I'm a that. I'm a conjurer. I'm a wizard. I'm a mystery person. I'm a shaman.
Mm-hmm.
And once you hit that point of that tier of skills, I feel like you can kind of just call yourself
Right. At
what
some
sums it
point,
up the
you just
best.
become you. You know, you just become like you hit that point that like I saw there was a newer interview with Darren Brown that went up, and in the the um, picture it said
Oh, okay.
I never called myself a mentalist, right? And you start thinking like I've never heard him say the word mentalist,
Right. No,
but
never.
but he's just Darren
We
Brown.
assumed it.
Yeah,
Right.
he's just Darren Brown. He's
Yeah.
just that's who he is. Like he's everything. He's you know like
Well, we've
we
talked about
know.
showman,
Yeah, he's
and that's like
showman.
one of those things where
The
I was
greatest
like,
name. They calling it
right,
just calling that special showman is
right,
fantastic because that you can put that on a business card.
right.
I mean,
That makes more sense than magician. When you look at P.T. Barnum was a showman
mm-hmm.
to the T. He knew magic. He knew stage illusions. He knew oddities. He knew science. He knew
It was a complete experience.
everything.
It wasn't just theatrical deception.
Right,
It was everything. It was you're going
right.
to get a lesson in everything.
Yeah,
Everything I'm interested in is going to be imparted onto you. Like
yeah,
that's fascinating to me.
yeah.
You know, like,
I think it's amazing
yeah, you
that
know,
we get to do this.
it's nice being able because they can tie those other interests in too, you know. And like one of my favorite things about the Darren Brown specials has always been that it's not just magic mind reading, you know, like he's tying in hypnosis, he's tying in all these old, you know, the charlatan stunts. He's tying in,
Hmm.
oh, I like robots from the 1800s. Bam, we got a
Right,
special, you know, things like that. Like that's
exactly.
kind of fascinating. It's
Yeah,
everything that there is about me, you know. I make leather goods like wallets and
that's cool.
making watch straps and like just
Yeah.
little thing. It was a hobby I picked up during COVID. I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate that stuff into my. I want to make my own cups and balls. You know, my own leather
Oh wow.
cups. I want
Yeah.
to, you know, I want to incorporate some of the other things, like my other interests, into the act in different
Yeah.
ways. You know, and make it a fully formed show as opposed to just, you know, come watch me do some tricks.
I think that's the goal, right?
Yeah,
I think a lot of younger magicians are kind of realizing that much quicker than I
yeah,
think
they're
you're
so
just a
spoiled.
tiny bit older than me. Yeah, I think they're learning that much quicker because I'm where I am in my age and we went from VHSs to now and the progression and all that. And I feel like it skipped me and Shane talk about this a lot. That
Mhm.
magic kind of skipped a generation. It's kind of controversial, so I'm not going to
Right.
dive too much into it, but I personally feel like
Shane's got some
magic
controversial takes on that. Yeah, I got it.
uh,
It's easy
that's
for you.
it's kind of like trauma bonding he and I
Yeah.
because it's like we talk about things and we're like, "Oh, do we have the same parents cuz we're kind of the same person?"
So I'll tell you a funny thing about Shane. We are exactly the same age, like, within 12 hours of each other, right? So
Really?
yeah. So when I always thought he was like you can't tell. Like, is he younger than
Right.
me? Is he older than me? Right? And like so, whenever I found that out, I started thinking about it, and like then you start putting things in perspective. Like, oh, look at it, what this dude's accomplished versus what you know, and like you start comparing, you know, and
Yeah.
comparison's the thief of joy or whatever the old saying is. But like I love it because I can look at this dude and go, he's one of my favorite people in the world.
Yeah.
Anytime we talk for hours. You know, it
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
happen as often as probably either of us would like because of
Yeah.
conflicting schedules. But when we talk for hours and
Oh yeah.
start saying some stuff, and I'm like, I get why you don't put this stuff online. Like I
Yeah.
got it, I get it.
Yeah.
He's got some like he knows what he's into and what he likes
Hey,
and how his
I love Shane.
fascinating guy.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that, you know, like whenever I sit and talk to him, I'm like, man, this guy knows what he's talking about. So it makes me think like I should probably sit down and read some of the books again.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the whole thing. That's how I got into, not just because I'm very uninterested in the current market of books. Every now and then, someone will message me and say, "Check this book out; it's worth it," and I'll go buy it. But my best friend, I think between the two of us, we have a pretty heavy library of books, and
Hmm.
he stays in the older. Lately, he's been staying in the older books. He got a book, The Card Wizard, which is a much older book, and he was saying how there's a lot of great things in there. There's a lot of great things in there, and like going through magic without apparatus, and
Hmm.
rereading our magic and all this stuff, and kind of boiling it all down and getting rid of the skim that the scum at the top. That's kind of like, I hate to word it that way, but
Right, but
you know, I'm just gonna say there's a lot of bullshit out there. That's
right.
not everybody's gonna use it, and no one's gonna use it. So I think when you jump into the books, it's kind of like it's interesting to kind of read the old books, and especially something like Our Magic, which it's too controversial, and I don't really want to go into all of it on here. But I think it's something that the younger magicians, like going back to what I was saying, the younger magicians are jumping right in. That's their
Hmm.
starting point, and they're growing from there. I have someone coming on here for their interview this week, and heavily involved in tannins and everything like that. And I've never seen a group of kids go into Tannen's magic camp and come out of it and they're ready to go. They understand the theory, they understand
Right,
how magic should be. They're not wearing jeans and a t-shirt, not that there's anything wrong with that, but they're not wearing jeans and a t-shirt and going to go perform at a venue or a private gig. They are ready to go. They have the pockets, the suit, they're ready. They're ready to go.
right.
It's a respect towards the industry that we didn't. Me personally, I don't. I
I didn't
think
have.
like I said,
I
the generation changed. I think
Yeah.
it's skipped.
I definitely. I mean, I grew up in the Panhandle of Florida, right? So like, I would see magicians few and far between. Like, one would come to the school, when I was a kid, every once in a while, and I didn't have the luxury of tracking down the mentors.
Right.
The first person I would really consider to be a mentor was from New Mexico. So I joined the Air Force when I was 18, 19, I think 18, and they sent me for, oh, you're from the beach, we'll go to the desert, right? Same thing, a lot of sand, there's just no water at
Right.
the end, right? So they sent me to
Right.
the desert, and I got really lucky that I met some of the people that I met there.
Hmm.
Like I I got to hang out with Ernest Eric.
That's very cool.
Like, how many people get to say that, right? he
I
just
know.
he worked at the college 3 blocks down the road from the magic shop where I hung out every day. So he would walk up and down the street and pop in. We'd try to sell him a Svengali deck, and then like don't know who he is, and then you find out, and you're like, oh, I'm an idiot. So like I met a guy there who did a kind of a mentalism, hypnosis, bizarrist kind of show, and he had traveled all over, and he knew what he was talking about. Introduced me to a lot of just amazing introduced me to Tommy Wonder, or
It's
his magic,
amazing.
not Tommy, but his
Yeah.
Tommy's magic. And that was my first experience with having somebody who could actually like put me on a good
Right.
path, and I was
Right.
20. So like, it's a lot different now. It was
Yeah.
at the birth of the internet magic community. So
It's
now
crazy.
it's all the information is there, and it
Right.
becomes a matter of figuring out how to wade through the bad information and
Right.
get to those kernels that are hidden.
Yeah.
Um,
I was mentoring a through this, and I had the membership going. I met a kid. At the time, he was a kid, and now he's an
mhm.
adult, which blows my mind.
Right, you're
Um,
old. I got it. I've got a
Note
couple
to
of people
self
I
for
was
the
working with that
episode.
have kids, and I
Yeah.
realized like, oh, my kids are like going on 30 now, aren't they?
Right.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. And when I met him, he was already at a point where he had been teaching himself, that I'm just like, great. All we need to do is like, you need to work on your pattern,
Hmm.
mentor them, right? And what's interesting is already from the beginning, he was already at a point where it took me a decade just to get there. Like his coin stuff, just his and they were already, they're kind of, there was a big illusionist influence and all this other
Right.
stuff, so they're learning all the flashy, disappearances and reappearances and all this other stuff. I don't do that stuff, so it was just kind of one of those things where it was a challenge for me to kind of figure out as a mentor how to kind of help that kind of be who he wants to be as a magician.
Hmm.
Because he, at first, he wanted to be quick and fast and flashy
Right.
and all this. And I'm like, at the end of the day, that doesn't work all the time. Uh, let's back it up.
Right.
Here's card college. Here's expert card technique, and here's this and Tommy Wonder, and we started going from there. And then it again building that arc, right? And then it goes full circle. And he's like, I get it.
Nice.
And
So
I feel like the younger generation, they already start off with that because there's so many
it,
people right
it,
now in our
it's
industry
like a
that
head
just
start.
right.
Yeah. So on the subject of coin magic, this is something that I love my coin magic. Right. Coin magic might be my favorite type of magic to watch. Right. Just because
Really?
because if it's done well,
Mm-hmm.
and when people do like card magic, I love card magic. Don't get me wrong. I can sit and watch people do do that, but
After a while, it's like,
but yeah, but like with coins, I can see, like I don't see the same. I don't want to say I don't see the same variety. I don't see the same tropes, I guess. But
mm,
have you noticed, being that you've been around magic for so long, that coin magic made this just ridiculous leap
yes.
forward, like 15
Mm-hmm.
years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
Right? Like David Roth essentially invented coin magic,
Right.
right? Like before,
And set a tier.
yeah, before Roth, right? Like if you've ever read the Downs coin magic book, when they wanted to steal a stack of coins, he would take a stack of $half and drill a hole through them and tie them together with a piece of string so he could handle
Oh
them as a
wow.
group. Yeah. Like Roth changed all of that, right? So like
Right.
with the Bobo book and then Roth and then the Roth school. But then it was like 15 years ago that everything changed.
Yep.
And like in my head, I link it back. I mean, obviously the internet had a lot to do with it because you're connected to magic from around the world. In my head, I connect it to like Ponta the Smith doing,
Correct.
sick, right?
Mm-hmm.
When that video came out and everybody went, "Holy shit, what's going?" And it changed things a little bit.
I'll go before that and say Danny Goldsmith.
Yeah,
Even
and so I'm
when you
becoming
see
more
him do that
familiar
stuff,
with
I'm
his
like,
stuff.
wow.
Just the video,
Right.
the reels, the highlights, and trailers and stuff. Like coin magic has just it is kind of
It looks
incredible.
like real magic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of the stuff like you watch it and you just go like I want to see it live, right? I want to give it the Charlie Miller, like, all right, do it again. All
Right.
right, hold on, let me get here. Now do it again.
Right.
Let me get underneath and
Are we becoming the old school?
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
starting
we're
to
old
sound like we're
bastards now. Yeah, yeah. Back in my day, people
yeah.
didn't do all this flash, but
This is my coins across. Yeah.
yeah, I
Right.
think it's really worth thinking about because just because like it's so fascinating to me,
Yeah.
to that evolution. Card magic is. I mean, I don't want to say like it hasn't evolved. Card magic has definitely evolved between the Marlowe generation developing every way of, and then Jerry Andrus. I was talking to someone
Oh yeah.
Andrus earlier, and the same thing.
Totally different.
Like
Yeah.
all of the technology it's definitely growing,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's like, but with coins, I've noticed specifically that there's like a sharp divide. With card magic, it seems like it's a much more gradual, but
Yeah.
coins, it's like everybody's here, and then all of a sudden,
Mm-hmm.
bam, and
Yeah. Even with my coin work in the show that I'm trying to put together, it's like, I have three classic pieces, and I would, obviously find the best one and put your spin on it, learn all of them. But, I think that's the funniest thing for me is, I was trying to look for resources and everything, and I came across a coins across. And I'm thinking, because I'm not going to reveal anything, but the standard coins
Mhm.
across, just is good enough. And then I came across a video, I think it was on Instagram, and it literally, I told my best friend, I was like, I'm just so mesmerized by it because it looked like he took one coin, went like this, and they went across, and then this, and then they went across, and the third one still there, and then hold on, and it goes across.
Yeah.
And he's like, "It's a shell and a transfer. You missed the entire move." And I was like, "No way, there's a shell and a transfer and all this." He goes, "No, there is."
That,
Rewind, watch it again, and I go, "Oh, there it is. Got it." But you're so focused on like what they're it's different. It's totally
right.
different.
Like you start, the coins. I think it's, the body language and the technology and the psychology. Like it all comes together in a really interesting way.
Well, even the I don't know what it's called, but they put it in their hand and they
Right. Yeah.
and then it goes and I'm like, "Wait, is it is it where I think it is? And how are you able to do
Right.
this?" Cuz
So
I can't even.
if you ever go on Instagram and you see, I think the account is Aspen Magician, but it's
Okay.
Aspen, right? She is one of my kids, right? And I
Oh,
say
really?
that, but I didn't teach her magic. I We hung out and jammed whenever I lived in Albuquerque. Her best friend is one of my kids. We used to sit and jam all the time. He's the one I was telling you earlier that, like, I've got 6 of these notebooks, and he told me at one point that when I die, he wants my notebooks, and there's a decent chance he might have me killed to get them early, right? So that's Chase, and
It's on record, so if we
it's on
know
record.
we
So
have a
we know
name now
instantly,
and
and my books are going to somebody else. But Aspen is Chase's best friend. So we
okay.
met and I became acquainted that way. I used to run I started a young magicians club in Albuquerque whenever I was working in the magic shop, right? So all the kids would come in, they would all want lessons. So we would start doing lessons like once a month, twice a month. And I'm like, well, hell, let's turn it into a magic club, all right? So then it was like an organized thing, and I think we had them do shows. Like it was cool. Somebody took it over. It actually lasted after I left, which was pretty cool. But Aspen would show up occasionally, and like I would watch that evolution. And now I'm watching her do things on Instagram, and I'm going, how the hell? Like, all right, show me that. You're like, no, no, turn sideways and show. No, like, no,
Right.
shut up, show me. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And like, so it's
Show me the exposed view. Where
yeah,
what's
and it's like, all right, you got to walk me through it.
right.
Don't be an asshole. Walk me, and
It's
it's
crazy.
it's kind of interesting. I've been doing magic 30 years, and I haven't seen anything like some of the stuff she's doing.
I agree
Uh,
with you.
it's
I
the
feel like there's a
but
huge leap.
but like Danny Goldsmith is one of her influences. That's where like
Hmm.
she watches that and learns that side. It's like she was coming into
Interesting.
it when Sick popped up, right? And
Huh.
when that Asian influence in coin magic started to kind of creep across. So
Asian influence is a whole
it's
different.
it's another level.
Right.
It's like Spanish card magic and Asian coin magic, or Japanese coin magic. They bumped it forward.
Yeah. Well, it's like Spanish. It's like the Spanish school of magic is just a whole different.
Yeah.
I think that's what's interesting that's happening right now is me personally, I'm seeing these different pockets of
Mm-hmm.
magic taking place, and it's not they're staying in the pocket and they're perfecting it and getting it, and then they're presenting it to the world and saying, "We're from so and so. Let's show us what kind of magic we do here. This is our coins across, but let's show it our way." And I
Right.
think that's really interesting.
Like taking the same plots but adapting. Like it's because we don't know what they've been doing for the last 100 years. I wanted to learn Spanish just so I could watch Rene Lebon work in his native language, right?
Yeah,
And
which is amazing, by the way. If anyone hasn't,
unbelievable, right?
yeah,
It's pure poetry. And then you go over to Spain and you look at what they're doing, and Danny de Ortiz and Babel in France, and
mm-hmm,
you find out like, oh, like
mm-hmm,
it's real, like it's serious
yeah,
over there, around the world. But the different schools have evolved in their own way, and now we get this nice, the community of magic comes together, and suddenly everybody's wanting to share. It makes me think of like mixed martial arts.
mm-hmm,
When I was a kid, I remember I watched some of the early, like the very first single digit UFC specials on, and then it was like, this guy does taekwondo, that guy does jujitsu. Let's watch the taekwondo guy get beat up. Right?
yeah. Who's gonna kick whose ass first?
Yeah, I say the taekwondo guy get beat up. I have a black belt somewhere around here from taekwondo from when I was a kid, and a 10-year-old jujitsu expert would just not, whatever.
Yeah,
It is
yeah,
what it is. But over the last 20 years, like it's all of the styles have come together there, and now
right.
everybody's kind of doing the best of all
Yeah.
worlds. And magic's the same way, right? We
Yeah.
take, like, we've got these guys doing that, and these guys are doing this, and now they're all meeting in Las Vegas and like showing off what they do. You can
Yeah.
hop on, you can buy their download, buy their video, and see exactly what's going on, and then you can figure it out. And then you find these master writers, and you
Yeah.
find their philosophy on putting together and constructing their material, and suddenly
Right.
we've got these magic shows that are like on another
Amazing.
level.
Do you know Bernardo Sedlicek?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah,
So
great dude.
before he exploded, right now I would say now he's exploded. He's out there now. So before he was kind of still underground, one of his first stops to America was Atlanta,
Hmm.
and he came to the Harvest Festival, and I think Ken Scott might have added him on last minute because he wasn't on the bill. And he goes, "Oh, we have a treat for you. One of the first appearances here in America, Bernardo Sedlicek, and I don't know how to explain what he does, so I'll just let him do his thing." And Bernardo, and he comes out, and curly hair, and he's got the Flame T-shirt on, and I'm sitting here, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm sitting there like
Right.
old school, like I don't know. I don't
It's
know
a
this.
Doug Hennig look. Like he
Right,
doesn't look like what I expect a magician to
right,
look
right.
like.
And I was like,
He does
okay.
Bernardo stuff. Yeah.
2 seconds in, and I'm just like, wow, wow. And I don't know what the effect is, but he closed it. He closed that set out by having the card, I think, maybe disappeared, and then he was like, "Oh, but what you didn't see is it's reversed in the deck. I'm not going to touch it. You can look if you want to. You don't have to look if you don't want to." And that's it, folks. Thank you so much. And he walks off, and I'm like, "But now I fucking want to see if
Now
it's."
you, right. That's a
Can someone
cool
can someone
experience
ribbon spread
too.
it? Because I want to see.
That's
And I told him afterwards, I was like, we sat down for maybe 2 hours after that. He was going around the lobby and everything. I sat down with him and I said, these are my friends. This is who I associate with. I would love to sit down with you, and we did, and it was amazing.
yeah. I met him through V Hill. I mean, he was one of those guys that wanted to come over and hang out at the condo and talk magic. So I got to watch some of his
Crazy.
stuff close up and spend some time with him. Bernardo's so good, dude. He's very
So it's that
clever.
Brazil, right? The magic in Brazil, Spanish school,
Yep.
heavily influenced, and it's just really interesting that Brazil kind of has this, like you said, like this school of magic that's kind of becoming its own thing because we're seeing small pockets of Brazilian
Right, they
magicians
all evolved in their
showing.
own way because
Right,
of the disconnect, right? Like they're not here,
right,
they don't see what the guys in Vegas are doing, they don't see the
right.
guys over wherever, and then all of a sudden, like they learn something new and they can adapt these ideas to what, and so it becomes this, it's the melting pot metaphor, I guess, but it becomes this thing where you start picking and choosing the best parts of everything that fit what you do, and that like that,
His lecture was even better.
yeah.
His lecture was even his. I think it's called like the Nameless lecture or
Hmm.
whatever he was doing
Sounds
at the
right.
time. Much better than his. Not that there was anything wrong with his show, but it was when, as a magician, once you start to understand how he's breaking everything apart, and I always
You
use
have
the
a new
Iron Man
appreciation.
metaphor. Yeah, he's
It's
pulling everything apart and looking at it and dissecting it
yeah,
and then putting it all back together is really,
yeah. That's
it's
the
on a
art
different
to me.
level.
That's the part that fascinates me,
Right.
is watching the how people will do that. How they can take this. Oh no, that's garbage. Like this part I like though, and then they can take that part and they can expand on it and make it theirs. And yeah, his stuff is very clever that way, because he takes things that and then uses them against you because he's not using them the same way you know them.
Right.
Really
I
cool.
think that's kind of what we were talking about earlier about being so versed in what it is that you do that you can, the ability to do that is just on a different level. I also think as a magician, when you're sitting down and you can keep up with the conversation, I think is really important as well too.
Hmm.
I think a lot of young magicians already, like you said, they kind of get that leap already. You're talking about things from this book and things from here and this video and da da da, and they go, "Yeah, I know." And you go, "Oh, you know? Okay, so you know, so we don't need to." And they're
But
like, "Yeah, where's a deck of cards?" And it's like
yeah,
being able to keep up with the conversation is also really important. Whether you do this stuff or not, I think it's important to.
right. And some of it though is Dunning Kruger, right? You know what you know, but you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So I've found that before too. Like they skip some levels. So
Mm.
the people that come in and know this new school of coin magic specifically, you can fool them with the Roth stuff because they're not
Right.
expecting it. You know, like
Right.
they can make that coin vanish at the fingertips back and
Right.
forth, but they don't know how to, but they don't,
Yeah.
the psychology of reaching for the magic wand, during a
Exactly.
retention pass is different because they're not
Exactly.
using it. They've skipped those chapters,
Exactly.
and it's something. It's one of the other reasons I like going back to the old magic, the old books, the watching Vernon do the things, because
Hmm.
once you see that and you understand that, then you can use this new stuff, the new technologies, and take it another, take it that
Yeah.
extra step forward.
You know, it's really interesting. I've told a few people, including you, as I'm going, I finished the Revelation tapes probably 5 times over, and I
Mm-hmm.
I find myself going back to it always for inspiration. I know there's so many other things that I can pull inspiration from, but the Revelation tapes is really interesting because it's a master class, I think, on
Absolutely.
Vernon. But what's interesting is, like you're saying, is that there's a point where he starts to. I don't know why you would do it that way. I don't know why
Right.
you would.
Right.
Why would you? I don't do it that way. That's an old school. Whether it comes off as being curmudgeon or grumpy or whatever,
Yeah.
that's an old school way of teaching because Marlowe was like that, and there were other magicians who were like that too. That was like, why would you do it that way? Like, why
Well,
would
Johnny,
you
that was actually one of the things that Johnny and I disagreed on, right? Let's say that
really?
I disagreed with the great Tom Sony. His first name's great for a reason, right? Like he was going to win, but like it was something that Johnny would say, "Oh no, that's not the way you do it." Right? I watched him talk to, another one of my heroes. He's like, "Oh, that's not the move," and then the guy's like, "I know this is my move, right? Like this is something else. Like I'm doing the."
Right.
But Johnny, like he kind of had it in his head, like this is it. I remember one time he would ask me. We were talking about the classic pass. I don't do a classic pass, right?
Neither do I.
But like I do. I mean, I can but I don't have that invisible Tom
Mm-hmm.
Sony, Jared Koff,
Mm-hmm.
invisible from every angle. Right?
Right.
But I remember at one point, like John was like, "Do you do this guy's or this guy's? Like the Fred Black or the whoever it was?" And it's like the difference was here or there, right? Or here or like
Mm-hmm.
here. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
man, like my hands aren't the same size as theirs, so I don't
Right.
do. I do a classic pass,
Right.
like it was one of those things that like I can appreciate the minute details, and I used to be fascinated by those minute details, but then I realized like you have other people hold their hand up and you put your hand next to theirs and go,
Uh,
right, my thumb bends backwards like this. It's as if
right.
I can do things that
Right.
people can't do. I can't do
Right.
things that they can't, so
I
it.
think that's what I was trying to mentor, this kid that I had about was that you got to have for me, it was important to have a catalog of
Yes.
in my head of moves and things like that, which is how I ended up getting into Marlowe and things like that. And he would show me things and just very similar to John, I'd be like, no, that's not it. And he was, why? And I was like, well, it's the move. It's not just the move. It's the way you're angling yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
all of it it's not going to play. And he actually appreciated, and I would be harsh sometimes. And admittedly, I had to
Yeah.
be like, that looks like shit. Like, let's just kind of scrap it and we'll show me something else and we'll go back. Over obsessing about it, it was like, for me, you know, I can go through a catalog of different things, and it was me trying to find the best resource for him.
Yes, I agree.
And because I have my way, I'll do my triumph my way. Let's see, just as long as you have the foundation of Stars of Magic, right? I think is a good foundation for
Right.
triumph.
Absolutely.
And then from there, you can kind of go off onto whatever you need to go off onto. And yeah, admittedly, he didn't want to do it that way. So I was like, well, then I need to go through my catalog of like, how else we can do it, and we
Right.
ended up on the Frank Garcia one with the Daryl Triumph and
Right.
or display.
Yeah,
And
I mean, and everybody has to find their own way.
yeah,
And sometimes, I've learned that whether it's, telling somebody or being told, like, it doesn't work necessarily to go, that's wrong.
right.
It's more like, well, why do you think that's right? And then like if you start going down those paths, like Triumph, I think Triumph. I agree with John on the fact Triumph might be the best card trick,
Yeah.
right? Like it's my favorite. It's the one I've thought about the most. I've got variations for different situations. I've got you know, I've put a lot of work into it. In my mind, I've got a really good take on it. From
Mm-hmm.
if I'm behind the table, I closed my set at the castle with it a couple of times because I had to,
Yeah.
and it was one of those things that I remember everything from the Daryl display to whether or not you do it like Marlowe did, where the pack is face up but the card is face down,
Right.
versus doing it the way that Vernon, Johnny, and
Right.
everybody else, in that school will beat into you, where the
Mm-hmm.
deck is face down versus the card face up. And all of my friends would do it with, the deck face down, the card face up, Vernon
Mm-hmm.
style, and I understand why they would do that. And then I've
Mm-hmm.
done it, I go back and forth because I always enjoyed doing it face up and having that mystery of the card down. And then
Correct.
people are like looking. And then like I
Mm-hmm.
get why Marlowe would do it that way, but it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to go, oh, I do it the Marlowe way because that guy was such a great performer that people would, like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
would start to, it's a different kind, but why? So I at least had an idea. I had a couple, a few people I've had the discussion with, and like I go back and forth. Sometimes I want to do it that way, and sometimes it's this way, and like, does it matter to the people? Does it just matter
Mm-hmm.
to me? Like, and who knows, right? But there is
Yeah.
no like I can't see it as like it's got to be this way. Right? In that situation, it might be that way, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's an important part of the journey,
Yeah.
right? And it's something that we all have to we got to figure out our own thing, But like Johnny in particular, he was doing some of this stuff for 70 years. Like he had 70 years of experience in magic, more. Right? But I'm thinking from the time he ran away from home when he was 13,
Right.
passed away at like 84, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that 70 years, dude learned a lot. So
Yeah.
he had all of the arguments with himself. So he was going to do it the way that he had already decided.
Right.
He decided 20 years ago this is the best way to do it. So
Right.
he doesn't have to have the discussion. But
Right.
I didn't.
There's no discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like he could explain the reasoning why he thinks this is this way. Some of the my other friends to explain why they do it. I got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's all part of that artistic journey.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because you've helped me with what's now my closer to the show, where I used the Jeff Price. I don't want to say too much, but the Jeff Price thing, and then we went
Yeah,
into
yeah, yeah.
what we're talking about,
Absolutely.
and I added a little bit of a V Hill touch, which I'm pretty sure in the next 10 years is going to be a term, V Hill touch, where
Hopefully,
he's
it's a positive term because that could go. A lot of people sleep on that dude's couch.
So there's a point in the act where I accidentally bend a card, moving them out of the way, and then I go into what you helped me kind of develop, and I tested it at a wedding, and the deck going into the reveal, like you were just saying, face up deck, face down card, right? And I do that because it's that Skinner suspense
Yes.
where I can take it and they think that the trick is we're in the middle of the trick and it's ongoing, and but I take the card out and I go, there's a bend in this card. And I thought that was your card over there. And then, and I'm over here massaging it, trying to, and then I slowly, turn it over and they see the card and they're like, but you bent the card and it was supposed to be over there. And now it's here. And it's like this whole, again, that arc, right? So now
Right.
we've gone full circle of
It's like
the
it's
whole
just that
thing.
one extra layer,
Right.
and
Because they didn't see it coming. They thought something was going to happen over here and that's not the case. And like that equivocate, we've miscalled it and now we're doing something else and there's the reveal of it, and it played really well. I had been, again, going back to emotional reactions, I had someone sit there and go just stare, like no reaction at all, and they just stared
you,
at
you
it.
know that they're just processing. They're
Right.
trying to just yeah.
Which is weird, which is something new that I'm having to get used to, is people, and it's not a because you don't know if it's bad if they're like, oh, that
Right.
was. But I had 6, 7 people, around me who watched that, and I purposely had, my dad sitting next to me because my dad is just now seeing me kind of have this full magic experience, go full circle, and now you're performing it and all this other stuff. And he looked at me and was like, and he's kind of the one who's guided me my whole life through magic, took me to Copperfield. So he really
Nice.
he's seen some great magicians on his own, and he sat there and he was like, yeah, that is incredible. And he just kind of looked at everybody around, and someone was like, I don't understand. Like, I'm losing it. Like, I don't understand how that happened. And that card, is it a transpo? Is it a reveal? Is it,
Nice. Yeah,
yeah.
it's fun being able to follow that in yourself, just to see your own progression, and and to see it through somebody else is pretty awesome too.
Oh, yeah.
I remember, I grew up. My dad's blue collar guy, right? So growing up, like he always like card tricks are good, do that, but like keep doing the computer stuff and military
Yeah.
and do all
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's a career. It's the
Yeah. Yeah.
very hardworking blue collar guy.
Oh, yeah.
And then when I was 18, 19, and he actually saw me throw down and perform, like
Yeah.
do something for somebody, and then it's like, oh, this
Oh,
could
yeah.
actually be something, and
All those purchases and all those.
yeah,
Oh,
you start seeing, from a different
right.
stance, and like, so like once people can kind of come along the journey, and then they hit the avalanche, right? And like they're on the way down, and now they're caught, and oh, I see it. I get why
Right.
So it's cool, and like as a performer or an artist, being able to see yourself make those leaps. It's one of the reasons I write everything down, right? You can see. That's the way I used to think about this. Man, I was an
Hmm.
idiot 10 years ago. Why would I do that? And or like I
Yeah.
record all of my shows because I like being able to go back and how did I do this back when I was whatever, and I've always thought that was important because it's important to me, not the audience. But
Yeah.
I like seeing my own progression. I like seeing what I do differently, and I still have all my books and my videos and everything that I bought while I worked at the magic shop paid me in trade. So I was just handed stuff, right? Like I was a hell of a salesman in a magic shop because I was so fascinated with all of it that I could make all of it
Hmm.
sound incredible. If
A
it was
hundred
something that
percent.
somebody was interested in, I could, like I could show that same excitement, and because of that, they were just like, "Well, here, take that. Go learn that one. Go learn this one. All right, you're going to pitch this next, dude." So I got to see all of that, and I don't want to get rid of any of it. I don't want to sell off my DVD collection. I barely have a way to watch those anymore, right? But I like being able to flip through and go, "Oh yeah, I remember when I got this because I like that trick on it." And
Hmm.
I would never perform that trick now,
Right.
but I like knowing that that was part of my journey. I
Right.
think the journey is as important as the destination when it comes to what we're doing.
To wrap it up, I think you sharing your journey with us and talking to me a little bit more about your huge accomplishment with the Grand Canyon and what you have going on now. What would be your advice for magicians who are breaking into this, who saw a magician and now they're inspired? Where do they go? What would be your advice?
To man, learn everything and not just about magic. Keep whatever your other interests are can all be adapted or brought in or and used in the performance. If you or play an instrument, you can incorporate that into the show. The show isn't about like look at the trick, hey, I found your card. It's like look who I am. Like here's this is me, right?
Hmm.
So everything that you are into and interested in can be part of this journey. If you want to be an artist, it has to be part of the journey. And if you don't want to be an artist and you just want to be a dude doing tricks at the party down the street, I always say I met both of my ex-wives doing magic, right? And I met my ex-wife doing card tricks in high school, but I met my the fiance that didn't pan out, but I met her doing the same thing, doing a gig. Everything about it is that's all part of me. So like bringing, the magic is only part of the journey, the trick itself, but like there's so much that you can do. And now we have the entirety of knowledge from the beginning of recorded history is at your fingertips, right? We've got access to everything. You can
Right.
learn music, and I do archery, and I do the leather crafting, and all of the stuff, and I can incorporate all of the things that I learn into the journey of magic. Like it's fascinating. You learn to mix a drink and work behind the bar, and suddenly now you've got this new avenue that you can progress, that you can pull into the set to make it interesting, to make it, so I think that's it. Just learn everything you can about anything that interests you, and keep the excitement so that you can share it with people, or keep it to yourself and just know that you know how to do it. You don't have to share it with anybody to love it, right? Like I know enough people that play guitar that they don't play it for other people,
Right.
right? You can sit there with pencils drumming on a notebook. You don't have to do it, but
Hmm.
do it for you. Just learn
Yeah.
everything you can to make yourself, you know, the version of you want to be. I think
I think
that's
that's I think that's great. I think it's
yeah.
great advice. I
Well,
think
thanks
I'll
for
add in
letting
there
me
to
come and do
enjoy the
this too,
practice.
man. Like this has
Yeah.
been fun. I love sitting and having these discussions, and it's cool because like you're so into it too, and we have so many mutual friends. So like I knew this was going to be an easy conversation to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I knew from the beginning when Shane told me, "Hey, there's a guy, actually a friend of mine in Georgia. You might want to look him up." And this was a couple years ago, and I was like, "Really? Okay." And then it kind of went from there. So thank you for taking the time and
yeah, oh, you're very welcome.
sitting down and diving into all these different pockets of you and magic and what it has to offer. And I think the best advice I can give our listeners to piggyback off of yours is always leave magic better than how you found it,
Yes,
because it'll be good to you in the future. So,
I think that's very important too, man. I definitely agree. It's like I see things every time I pop up on, I scroll Instagram, and like I see the disrespect that people, they don't get it, but and it's funny because that it's coming from that love, like that interest. They wanted to do it, and then they figured out like, oh, it's more than just knowing the secret. It's more than just this bit. Like
hmm,
I have to be able to and it's just so they go for the easy road of giving this away, as
right.
opposed to showing it that little respect. I think so. I think you nailed it. Leave it better than you found it.
I think on that note, we end it.
Hell yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you taking the time to sit
Oh,
with me.
thanks a lot, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining me on the MO sessions. I hope you found some inspiration and insight to bring a little more magic into your world. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. For updates and further thinkings, the dope, or any of my essays, please see the links in the show notes. I'll see you next time, and remember, leave magic better than when you found it.